talent, and creative places we have here in Indiana. Hoosiers tend to be a humble bunch, but it's important we take time to share the creativity in our great state on a national stage. Every other year, in conjunction with Indiana Arts Homecoming, we honor some of the best among us with Indiana's highest honor in the arts, the Indiana Governor's Arts Awards. While we had to postpone the in-person celebration, which hopefully we'll get to next year, we are pleased to announce that the recipients of the 2020 Governor's Arts Awards are the following. Jim Bodenmiller from West Lafayette, Indiana. Jim's work on behalf of the arts has had a long history of impact in the Tippecanoe County region. He has served on the boards of many arts institutions, putting several on the path to sustainability. He is a former Indiana Arts Commissioner and Chair, and he, during his tenure, oversaw the implementation of the Regional Arts Partner System, which continues to this day as a successful model for equitably distributing funds to all of our 92 counties. In 1997, Jim retired from Eli Lilly after 35 years of service. Michael Cleveland, a musician from Henryville, Indiana. He's a Grammy Award winner and with a record-setting 12 wins as Fiddle Player of the Year by the International Bluegrass Music Association. Michael Cleveland's indomitable spirit, rare talent, and work ethic have brought him to the pinnacle of his profession. His masterful playing attracts an all-star roster of guests. On his 2019 release, Tall Fiddler, he has his touring band Flamekeeper. He and they were recently profiled in an inspiring documentary. Hurley Goodall, an advocate and former lawmaker from Muncie, Indiana, born in 1927, Hurley graduated from Muncie Central High School in 1945, worked in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers from 1945 to 47, and was a civil rights leader in the 1950s and 60s. In 1976, he co-authored a book entitled A History of Negroes in Muncie. In 1980, he presented the Black Muncie History Collection to the Ball State University Bracken Library, where it's still available in its archives and special collections. Hurley Goodall was instrumental in the development of the Indiana Arts Commission Arts Trust License Plate Program and the passage of the enabling legislation for that trust. John Green, an author who calls Indianapolis home. John is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Looking for Alaska, An Abundance of Catherines, Paper Towns, The Fault in Our Stars, and Turtles All the Way Down. He is also the co-author with David Levithan of Will Grayson. He was the 2006 recipient of the Michael L. Prince Award, a 2009 Edgar Award winner, and has twice been a finalist for the LA Times Book Prize. Green's books have been published in more than 55 languages and over 25 million copies in print. The Harrison Center for the Arts in Indianapolis is a force for cultural development in Indianapolis and a model for community arts education and urban revitalization. The organization addresses community problems with cultural solutions, art, music, education, and grassroots activism. The Harrison Center also cultivates emerging art patrons by redefining the boundaries of artist and audience. Robert and Barbara Stevens, advocates from Columbus, Indiana. Since moving to Columbus in 1985, Bob and Barbara have been leaders in business and supporters of the arts. Their commitment to cultural legacy of Columbus and the surrounding area can be seen in the range of projects, causes, and Indiana artists they have supported, including the Columbus Area Arts Council, the Columbus Indiana Philharmonic, the Duke Commons Building, and the J. Irwin Miller Architectural Program, and the Brown County Art Gallery expanses as well as the new visitor center at the TC Steele State Historic Site in Brown County. And the recipient of the 2020 Governor's Emerging Artist Award, Amy Olsner, is a musician from Bloomington. Her homemade pop songs sparkle with the eternal truths that storytelling is part of being alive and excavating the past is part of growth. Olsner, who records as Amy O, is a lifer of the indie pop underground. Her latest project, Shell, is her third studio album and 10th, including her many years of home recordings. In addition to music, Amy was the assistant director of Rhino's Youth Center and led the Zine writing program, which encouraged adolescents to share their own stories and engage with the public. She's also a teaching songwriter at Ivy Tech Community College and founder director of Girls Rock Bloomington. We're planning a celebration next year in Columbus with these 7 incredible people. I hope you'll join us. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Josh Mauthe, Senior Advisor to the Senior Deputy Chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts. The National Endowment for the Arts is the only federal agency dedicated to supporting the creative capacity of American communities. Josh serves as the Senior Advisor. As I said, he is a graduate of Indiana University, however, the one in Pennsylvania, not the one here in Indiana, with a degree in art education. Josh has worked with the American Council of Life Insurers, the Secretaries of Education and the Interior, and the White House as advance for the President and First Lady. Josh has a passion for politics and in his spare time enjoys painting, drawing, and spending time with his family and friends. By the way, if anyone could tell me who's the most famous person from Indiana, Pennsylvania, where Indiana University is, I will give you a shout out from the chat. Old-time movie enthusiasts will probably have a leg up in that answer. Moderating the discussion today is Indiana's own Sally Gaskill. Sally is a lifelong arts administrator who has managed SNAP, a national survey of arts graduates, since 2008. Based at IU, SNAP is the Strategic National Arts Alumni Project, which investigates the educational experience and career paths of arts graduates in North America and is governed by a distinguished national board of directors. She started her professional life with the NEA's sister agency, the National Endowment for the Humanities, in the 1980s, and has worked as a consultant for the NEA, conducting over 100 site visits in the 90s. We're thrilled to have both Sally and Josh with us today, and I turn it over to them.
Thank you, Louis. I'm going to kick things off. It's such a pleasure to be here today with you and with Josh and with all of the viewers online and to share information about our beloved federal cultural agency, the National Endowment for the Arts. Over my lifetime as an arts administrator, I've seen firsthand the powerful impact that the Arts Endowment has had on growing the arts industry across our country. You know, the NEA was founded before Jimmy Stewart was born, after Jimmy Stewart was born, but when he was active in 1965, back in the Lyndon Johnson administration. And at that time, there was really only a handful of regional theater companies across the country, of dance companies, of arts councils, of literary organizations, folk arts programs. I could go on. In fact, before the NEA, there were no state arts agencies to speak of. Our own Indiana Arts Commission was created in order to accept federal taxpayer dollars from the NEA, as it continues to gratefully do so today. I believe that without the NEA support and serving as a catalyst for the arts throughout our country and here in Indiana, we simply would not have the richness of arts and cultural activity that we have today. Our intent with this town hall is quite clear. We want artists and arts organization leaders from across the state of Indiana to learn about the NEA and to learn that it's not scary to apply for a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. We want to increase the number of applications that come from our state. So we also want to, at some point, touch on the importance of arts advocacy as far as the NEA is concerned. I've been personally advocating for the agency since the 1990s culture wars, and I've never stopped with that particular passion. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Josh Mauthe from the Chairman's Office at the NEA. Josh is on mute. That's the mantra for 2020. Josh,
I thought that I was off of mute. I'm sorry. Thought I turned it off a long time ago. So I apologize. I was saying thank you all for having me here today, especially the Indiana Arts Commission for inviting me to speak to everyone here at the Indiana Arts Homecoming. I definitely want to thank Executive Director Ricci and Sally Gaskill for helping me out today and inviting me here. So I'm going to try to start off by sharing my screen here. And Sally already mentioned that we were established in 1965. The National Endowment for the Arts is an independent federal agency. We are the only arts funder in America that's public or private that supports the arts in all 50 states, the U.S. territories, and we also tried to make sure that there's at least one grant awarded in each of the 435 congressional districts. Now, every company or business or agency has a vision or mission statement. We also have that, but our Chairman Marianne Carter, her main priority, main mission for our agency is for you to have access to the arts and for you to have access to our agency. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Obviously, we going to talk a little bit about COVID-19. It's taken over our country. Obviously, we've had record job loss, economic loss, and the Arts Endowment did a survey with the national service organizations. And we did this survey because we wanted to get a feeling of how our art organizations were being impacted by this, what they were doing to try to recover, how they planned on reopening or going virtual like we are here today, and just different issues that they were going through and how they were trying to make things better within their organization. The CARES Act. So we were able to, I'm very fortunate to get $75 million appropriated from Congress to the Arts Endowment. And out of that $75 million, $30 million went directly to the states and regions. And I want to say that 18 days after the president signed the CARES Act bill into place, the Arts Endowment had that $30 million out to our states and regions to help get things moving. That left us with about $45,000 in direct grants to art organizations from the Arts Endowment. And we were able to roughly grant 855 grant to our art organizations and our friends out in the art world. And that it was about July 1st that they were all distributed. And these grants were designated to save jobs. That was the main priority, was to keep the lights on and to save jobs within the organizations. This slide shows a map of our state and regional partnerships. The National Endowment for the Arts offers partnership agreements to the 50 designated state art agencies, the U.S. territories, and 6 regional art organizations. The color coding on this map aligns each state with its regional art organization. And by law, 40%, which is 40% of our total budget. So that's when Congress passes, well, the president puts in for his budget and Congress passes it. And we get our funding for the year. 40% of our funding goes directly out the door and into the hands of our states and regions. This slide shows our 15 art disciplines that we have within the Arts Endowment. If you are going to apply for a grant with the Arts Endowment, you would pick one of these 15 art disciplines for the best fit for your project that you're going to apply for. And you can also find very important information. So this is kind of like my Bible. I always tell people to go to our website and in the search engine, search 2020 guide. And this will give you a PDF version of our guide that we typically hand out at in-person meetings, but obviously we're virtual at this point. So if you go to 2020 guide in the search engine on our website, you will get our guide and you will go to pages 20 and 21. That will list off all of these 15 art disciplines, and it will give you the contact name, number, and email of each of the different people and staff in these different disciplines. It's very, very important to keep in touch with our agency. Again, access to the agency. Once you've applied for a grant, it goes through a review process. It's about 3 levels. The first level is a panel of your peers. And this panel is made up of different genders, ethnicity, expertise, and geography. There's about 5 to 6 people on each panel. There's one lay person on the panel, and that person is knowledgeable in the arts, but does not make a living from the arts. They review about 30 to 40 applications, and it takes about 5 weeks for them to complete this review process of all the applications. Once the applications are reviewed and scored, they move on to the second level, which is the National Council on the Arts. And our National Council on the Arts reviews these applications as well, and they make their recommendations and approvals to our chairman, which is the third level. And the chairman just signs off on the recommendations from the panels and the National Council on the Arts. And below here, you see become a panelist. And there's a link there that you can go to, which is a form that you can fill out to become a panelist at the Arts Endowment. Now, becoming a panelist is very important. It's very important and helpful for you if you become a panelist and you want to apply for a grant sometime down the road, because you'll experience the panel review. You'll see what are successful grant applications and what's not so successful grant applications within the agency. So if you don't want to become a panelist, my suggestion is to contact us at the agency. That way we can help walk you through the process so that you can see what good applications are like and what not so good applications are like. We have 3 categories that we give grants out to organizations, and that's in grants for arts projects. That is also in our town and research. These are our largest grants that we offer to nonprofit organizations, and they receive the bulk of our direct funding. The first one, grants for arts projects. You would submit your application to the 15 art disciplines like I mentioned earlier. These grants include funding for creation, presentation, and exhibition, education, and services to the field. We typically give about 2,000 applications or grants each year. And these grants do require a 3-year history of arts programming to be eligible to apply for a grant. You also must have a 1-to-1 non-federal cost match to apply for a grant. And we fund large and small projects, new and existing projects, and projects that take place in the 50 United States, Washington, D.C., and our U.S. territories. I always like to tell a story about when I first came to the agency, which was just a few years ago. I was going to several meetings of the 15 art disciplines just to get to know the staff and a little bit about the discipline itself. And I was sitting in, I think it was art education, and a staff member came in a few minutes late. And of course, everybody in the meeting knew her, but I did not. And she was explaining to the group that she was on the phone with an individual that was applying for a grant with the Arts Endowment. She knew this person's name. She knew about their family. She knew the dog's name. And she was telling stories about this person that was telling her about their life. So to me, it just registered how important and how personable our staff gets with people who are applying for grants within the agency. And sometimes I hear that people are afraid to reach out to the Arts Endowment because they're fearful if they ask for help with the application process that they may not get that application granted to them because they've had this help, which is completely not true. Obviously, because of the 3-level grant review process, our staff doesn't have any part of that. So the thought that you would not get an application and granted to you because you've had help through our staff is not true. Our staff wants to help you. Our staff wants you to be successful in the application process. I will note there's 2 application deadlines for grants for arts projects. There's one in February and one in July. You can only apply one time out of the year. So you have to pick either February or July to apply for your grant for grants for arts projects. And these grants generally range between $10,000 and $100,000. Our next is Our Town. Our Town is the National Endowment for the Arts Creative Placemaking Grant Program. These grants support projects that integrate arts, culture, design activities into efforts that strengthen communities by advancing local economic, physical, and social outcomes. These applications must be partnered up between a nonprofit, design, or cultural organization, as well as a local government entity. There's one application deadline per year for this, and that is in August. And the grants range from between $25,000 and $150,000. Research activities. Research grants support research that investigates arts that make value and/or impact of the arts. The Arts Endowment also publishes research materials, analysis on topics affecting artists and art organizations. These grants range between $10,000 and $100,000. They also have only one grant deadline per year, and that's in March of each year. The Citizens Institute on Rural Design, or CIRD, it is a program where the population of 50,000 people or less, they qualify for the Citizens Institute on Rural Design. And the term is used to describe the community as rural in character. CIRD is a leadership initiative that the Arts Endowment conducts partnerships with the Project for Public Spaces, as well as the Orton Family Foundation. These are made to improvement to the community's streets, buildings, public spaces, and landscapes to address the specific physical, environmental, social, and economic changes facing rural areas. Since 1991, CIRD has convened more than 75 workshops in all regions of the country, empowering residents to leverage local assets today in order to build better places to live, work, and play in the future. Using design as its core strategy, CIRD helps rural communities celebrate and enhance their existing local resources. So this is a grant program for smaller towns, rural towns of 50,000 people or less. Some eligibility requirements when you're applying for a grant with the Arts Endowment. You must have a DUNS number, and the DUNS number is going to be your identification number for our application process. You must also be registered with grants.gov and sam.gov. Now, you also must have a 3-year history of arts programming to be eligible. And like I mentioned before as well, the 1-to-1 non-federal cost match. And generally, there's 1 application per organization per year. Some organizations that we fund. So there's a larger list of organizations that we do fund on our website, but a few are some nonprofit tax-exempt 501c3 U.S. organizations, local art agencies, and nonprofit colleges and universities, such as historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, and Hispanic serving institutions. The majority of the Arts Endowment grants are awarded to nonprofit tax-exempt 501c3 organizations that offer arts programming. We also have a list on our website of funding that may not be used for, and a couple of them are general operating or seasonal support, the creation of new organizations, the facility construction, purchase, or renovation, and individual schools. We do give funding to school districts, but not individual schools. And again, there's a full list on our website that you can find where we cannot give our funding to. Some helpful hints when you're applying for a grant with the Arts Endowment. Complete your grants.gov and sam.gov registrations. Even though you may have already registered for them, just make sure that they're current so that they don't expire before our deadlines are, because we all know the application process is pretty daunting with the National Endowment for the Arts. So we don't want you to have to also go through the application process for grants.gov and sam.gov and our application process. Just make your life a little bit easier. Always contact our staff with questions. Again, access to our agency. They're there to help you. They want to help you. They're very knowledgeable in their field, and they want everyone to be successful in the application process. Also, ask a friend to proofread for typos and clarity. We've all been there. We've all been working on a document, and you've sat in front of it for so long and you think that everything is great. Well, have someone look over it, and have someone to look over your grant application that doesn't have anything to do with your grant. Because for one, they're going to see the typos and clarity, and two, they're going to see if your project description comes clear to them as not being part of your actual project. So if they are feeling the project and get to know what you're applying for, then that's a good application, and that's a good way to start off the project. You also want to tell a story. Why this project? Why now? And what will change as a result? You also can review at any time sample application narratives on our website. This will give you sample applications of successful grant applications. That way it would give you also some more information on how to apply for your grant and what the panelists are looking for. This next slide shows actually our newly designed website at the Arts Endowment. This excites me beyond belief. I don't know if you know that, but our old website sometimes could be a little bit of a rabbit hole getting into things and trying to find certain things, but we have redesigned the website, and this is a screenshot of our main page. If you're going to apply for a grant, you would of course go to the menu button. And then when you click on that, that will give you this list of tabs of grants, initiatives, stories, impact, and so on. So you would choose the grants tab in the red circle. And that will bring you to a page that has the different areas where you can apply for a grant, a description of those things, like the grants for art projects, also Challenge America, Our Town, research awards, and grants for individuals. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but we don't give grants to individual artists, but in the literature field, we do give grants out to individual literature artists. Some national initiatives that we have within the agency. One of them is Creative Forces, which is a partnership between the National Endowment for the Arts, the Departments of Defense and Veteran Affairs, as well as state and local art agencies. This is basically using arts therapy to help our wounded soldiers that come back from war that have PTSD or psychological problems. And to me, I find it very important and very useful for the arts to be able to help these people who have also helped us so much. We also have Blue Star Museums, which is around 2,000 museums across the country that take part in this program. And that's where the museums give out free admission to our active military and their immediate families. We also have Shakespeare in American Communities. This is where we have professional actors and actresses come into middle schools and high schools, as well as juvenile detention centers. They have educational activities on Shakespeare. They perform some of his plays, and it's just a good way to bring together the students, teach them something about the history, and also it's very important to go onto these juvenile detention centers. It's a really good motivational skill for those who are incarcerated. For when they get out, they have a better social skills with people. We also have the National Endowment Big Read program. That's where we support about 75 community reading programs, each designed around a big read selection from the Arts Endowment. And these titles from the big read selection, they vary in genre, theme, settings, and points of view. And last but not least, we have Poetry Out Loud. Poetry Out Loud is basically a poem and recitation program in schools. The schools compete in each of the states, and the state winner then comes to Washington, D.C. for the national finals of Poetry Out Loud. And that's where they compete against all the different states and territories. They do their recitation of poems, either their own poem or a poem that they pick from the list. And then a national a winner is awarded $20,000 scholarship within the Poetry Out Loud and Poetry Foundation in Washington, D.C. It's a great program. Our arts and economy. So before the pandemic, arts and economy made a huge portion of our economy. It made about $877.8 billion of our economy, which is about 4.5% of our nation's GDP. And if you move over to the right here, this graph was the onset of the pandemic. And we did a research in between March and April of 2020. And the arts, entertainment, and recreation had a 42.4% job loss in our industry. It was second to accommodation and food services of our economy. So that just goes to show how important and how impactful the arts, entertainment, and recreation is to our economy. And we need to keep advocating for Congress to keep giving us money so that we can give that money out to you, and you can give that money out to each of the people, organizations, and within your state. So to grow our economy. But it just astounds me how important that the arts, entertainment, and recreation is to our economy, and it's second to food and accommodation. So that was really cool information that shows how important the arts field is to our economy. And lastly, this is my contact information. There's my email below, as well as our website, arts.gov. If you're having trouble getting in touch with someone within the agency, you can always email me and I will get you in touch with the correct person. If you have a question that we don't get to today, or if you don't want to ask it today, you just want to ask it privately, more than happy, just email me and I will get that answer for you. And I just want to leave you with two things. It's very important and to contact our staff for questions and help. Very important. And remember that the Arts Endowment is always here for you to help you. So those are my 2 points. This is my presentation. I thank you guys so much for allowing me to be here today. And I'll turn it back over to Sally and Lewis.
Thank you so much, Josh. That was just a huge amount of information, a terrific overview about the important work that the endowment and its staff do every day. So there are some major differences between what the NEA funds and what, say, our own state arts agency funds, the Indiana Arts Commission. So here in Indiana, fortunately, because we use both federal tax dollars from the NEA as well as state tax dollars through our state appropriation, we're able to fund some things that the NEA is not by statute. So for example, here in Indiana, we fund all individual artists, which is terrific. But we also here in the state are able to support arts organizations with general operating support. But at the endowment, at the federal level, you're not able to do that. Is that correct?
That is correct. So with your grants, you're not able to use it for general operating or seasonal support. And we also don't give out individual artists grants. I will say that during the CARES Act, the general operating and seasonal support portion was waived by Congress. So those who are applying for a grant, a CARES Act grant, were able to use their funding for general operating and seasonal support. And that obviously was mainly geared towards saving jobs and keeping the lights open in our organizations.
That's fantastic, particularly given that horrifying statistic that you quoted, which is a 42.2% job loss.
Exactly.
During the pandemic.
It's just, you sit here and you think like that's half of our economy. Almost half of our economy is us, our arts, our entertainment, and our recreation. It's really cool to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I was going to just point up to people that even though the NEA doesn't support artists directly, project grants that come to the NEA that include the engagement of local artists are certainly welcome. So, so people should be aware that that is a element of a grant that can very well be there, should very well be there in an application to the NEA. So I also wanted to point out that for those of you that receive, for instance, an operating grant from us that includes some federal money, that portion of our grant that includes federal money, which is in your grant contract, cannot be used for the one-to-one match, but the portion that state funds can be used for the one-to-one match. So just a couple things from the State Arts Commission's perspective on that.
Thank you, Louis. That's really helpful. So we have one question so far. Someone asks, can they have a number to contact to talk to a staff member about working on an arts education grant application? So how would you respond to that?
Well, I would respond if I was in person. I would hold up my 2020 guide and I would open it up to pages 20 and 21. But since we are virtual, I suggest two things. Either downloading that PDF file on our website at arts.gov and searching 2020 guide and going to page 20 and 21 where it lists out everyone's name, contact information, phone number, email. I suggest emailing at this time because we're all teleworking at the moment. And I know that I had my phone at my desk transferred to my cell phone and it didn't. So I'm not getting phone calls. So that may have happened to other people as well. So I would just say email is the best way. The second way is to email me. If you email me and say you want to be in contact with someone from the art education program, then I will get you in touch with Ayana and get you in touch with her so that you guys can start the process. Yeah.
So that would be Ayana Hudson, the longtime program director for arts education. Would you really want to start with the director, or do you want to start with one of the staff members? Just ask.
I typically, if someone emails me and asks me, I will go to the director. But
that's what you work for the senior deputy chairman.
Yeah, I guess we could go with a staffer. They'll know basically as much, but they're not the director. But I tend to connect the person with the director.
Yeah. So in other words, the NEA guide, which you've been referring to, or the NEA website in general, is constituents' main point of information on how to get started. They have all the names of the staff in each discipline-based program and their contact information. And
not the full list. What's up? I'm sorry.
During the pandemic, let's try first email and not phones.
Exactly. Yes. I was just gonna say it doesn't have a full list of the staff in each of the disciplines. It has basically a point of contact for that discipline, their phone number, email, and contact information.
That makes total sense. So going back to what Louis was saying earlier about the fact that, of course, the NEA supports individual artists. So if you're a composer, you can't apply directly for a grant from the NEA. However, if you're an opera company or an orchestra, you can, or an after-school program, a school district, you can absolutely include paying artists, paying composers as an important part of your budget. And for all of us who have been advocating for public support of the arts for so many years, paying artists, is what it's really all about. Okay.
Josh, could you give people an idea? I know the percentages are pretty high, but what percentage of applications get funded that come into the NEA?
That's a really good question, and one that I'm not sure of. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
If I had to guess, I would say probably like 30 to 40% maybe.
Yeah, I think that's about the number. Almost half the applications that you get funded. So just as a reference point for people, because sometimes people think, oh, trying to get something through the NEA, my chances are dismal or whatever. And the opposite is really true. And something else you might want to elaborate on, you try to have funded projects in every congressional district, right? Both House and Senate. So why don't you address a little bit about kind of the rural urban thing too, and how that has changed with the NEA, and grant the likelihood of grants getting approved that are from a rural footprint as well as from an urban footprint.
Yeah, so we have, that's a really good point. So as far as the Arts Endowment, we've always been trying to reach out, and we're doing more of that right now. That's why I was going out and about, getting to know people face to face, putting my face to the agencies, so that people felt more comfortable about applying with us. And then we also have different of the disciplines. They're also working hard to identify areas in the country that are not applying for grants, are very rural, because a lot of times those are the areas that don't apply, and that's for many, many reasons. They don't feel like they'll get the grant. There's a very small organization and a very small staff, and maybe one person wears many, many hats, and they don't have the money to hire a grant writer or have a grant writer for them. So there's a variety of reasons why our rural areas are not applying for grants, but we're working very diligently to get out and reach out to those areas so that they can have that confidence and start applying with us. And that's why I keep saying to contact our staff. If you don't have someone that is a grant writer for your organization, or you wear many hats in that organization, contacting our staff is basically kind of like having your own, not grant writer, but they're going to help you. They're going to help you through that process. And we just want people to be successful in their application process.
Great. So we got some questions that have been coming in, and I'll start with this one, Josh. So you've talked about wanting to get applications that use plain language, no jargon, and make sure that you've got them proofread. Are there specific things that panelists consistently respond well to? For example, should an applicant use quotes from artists, specific numbers and data, something else, any advice to help an application stand out?
To stand out, be very clear in your application, especially the description. That description is going to be very important to the panelists as far as what your project is going to consist of. So I wouldn't say quoting artists is really going to get you or set you above the groups, but just being very clear in your description is very important to the panelists, because sometimes they'll score a application that just has like 2 lines to their description, and it doesn't really show a lot about their project and what they plan to do with that project. So being very descriptive, very clear in your project description is going to set you above.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, as somebody who's been reading grant applications for 40 years. And one time somebody taught me to write like a journalist. So put your most important sentence at the beginning of the paragraph as your lead sentence, and then everything else in that paragraph should describe the lead sentence.
Yeah.
I found that to be non-intuitive for me, but something that's really helpful in terms of getting the word across.
Do you have any other suggestions, since you have been a panel reader? I have never been a panel reader, obviously, but so I don't know specifically what they're looking for, but you as a panelist, were you looking for anything in particular?
Honestly, I would say new and creative ideas. So especially with projects, you can take the opportunity to be as creative as you like, and with the help of the staff member, craft your proposal. And honestly, I've found that grant writing is a really good strategic planning process for a particular project. It really helps you get your act in order. You have to write down your goals and objectives for doing the work. You need to develop a budget, and a lot of grant writers do that first. You have to set a timeline for getting things done. And along those lines, about how far in advance would you recommend that somebody start thinking about a project and making that initial call to the endowment?
As soon as possible, as soon as you can. But I will say there's 2 steps to that application that you're going to fill out for the grant. There's a portal that will open up about I think it's 5 days before the actual application process goes live. That's where you fill out basic information, basically like your DUNS number, your company information, and then maybe a little bit about touching on the subject of the project that you're going to do. And then 5 days later is when the application portal app opens up, and it's open for about 6 days, I think. So we don't have our 2021 deadline dates yet. We just have the months, obviously. They don't have them published yet as far as the dates, but just keep checking back on the website. And I suggest that looking at those dates, and the first date that you have to fill out just a basic form letting us know that you're going to apply for a grant, I would back that up by like a couple weeks, maybe even a month, if you know what project you're going to be doing. But as soon as you can start working on it, the better.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with that. Louis?
I was going to jump in and say to prospective applicants to the NEA that if you've written a grant to the Indiana Arts Commission, a lot of our criteria, things that we hold as important, public access and public outcomes, all of those type of criteria that we use in our applications are embedded in the NEA application as well. In fact, there's a lot of alignment with any state arts commission and the NEA as far because the NEA provides leadership across the country for what is emerging, what's important, et cetera, et cetera. So if you've applied successfully to us as an agency, you probably have a lot of what you need in the basic things that you would include in an NEA application. Although, some of the specifics may be different. You might be applying for a project there, and you might have been applying for general operating support to us, et cetera. Really, a lot of what is embedded in those applications are very similar. So I really think the one sets you up for being successful in the other. So I would encourage people, if they've been successful with us, that they're probably ready to be successful with the NEA, and they should take that next step. And encourage people to do that. So the other thing I'll say, and I'll say this because my program staff isn't, well, maybe they are on this call, but I don't know it. But anyhow, given that our staff has any bandwidth, we'd be happy to also take a look at a draft of an application to the NEA and give you our opinion. Again, my staff isn't on here, so I'm offering. But as I said, as we would have some bandwidth, if we do have some bandwidth, we'd be willing to take a look at something. So especially if you're a first-time applicant to the NEA and want to run something by, we've done this many times at the Arts Commission, and a lot of our program officers have done this over time. And certainly we'd be willing to take a look at something like that to just help give you a few tips, or say, hey, maybe you need to address this, or you've addressed too much on this, give some weight to that sort of thing. We'd be happy to give you some opinion on that. So.
Okay,
that's very nice of you.
Nice
if
of you
have the bandwidth.
We have another interesting question. Josh, what is the effect of the September executive order on combating race and sex stereotyping on NEA funded grant projects? So as grantees, would we be subject to that order and be enjoined from conducting anti-racism trainings for our staff that conflict with that order?
Wow, that's a really good one that I don't know the answer to. I'm going to take a stab at it. Um, I believe you're saying that you. I'm looking at the question right now too. So if I'm like staring at the computer, I apologize. um, are you able to have programs within your organization on anti-racism and training? Is that
Despite the recent executive order that bans them in the federal government?
Man, I'm actually not sure, and I'm not even gonna take a stab at it because I don't know the answer to that. So it could also be up to the organization separate from us. Like the state and regional organizations have their own criteria. I don't know, because we follow the federal government guidelines and maybe you follow something else, but I would highly suggest emailing me so that I can get that answer for you.
Wow.
Because I would actually like to know the answer to that as well.
I'm not an attorney. I would like to preface my statement with that, but I would assume that since the NEA supports only projects, that if anti-racism training is not a part of a specific project for an organization, but is part of its overall board and staff development,
Yeah,
that it
that's
would have
true.
absolutely nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you. You
But
looked at it in a.
I'm not a lawyer. So we do have an election in November. So Josh, will the programs that you've been talking about stay the same as you've outlined, no matter what happens in the election?
Well, I'm new to the organization, so I'm new to right now. I would say yes, because they're pretty solid, especially the initiatives that we have, like Poetry Out Loud. That's in conjunction with the Poetry Foundation that we work with to do Poetry Out Loud, as well as Big Read, Creative Forces. And there's like it's kind of like in the 15 art disciplines, there's directors of each of those as well that take part and take charge of those. So I would say yes, they would stay, but it could be up to the next administration, as well as the chairman, of what they want to do and what their main focuses are. But I would say they do stay there.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, we were just talking when we were warming up for the call that, you know, the current chair of the NEA, Marianne Carter, was appointed to a 4-year term as chair, and that was 2 years into this administration that she was appointed to that position and confirmed. So Marianne is likely to continue into the next administration, whomever that is. So there's other points of, I think, continuity, I think, for the agency. And if you look at the history of the NEA, things have changed, but things have changed slowly.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's been, you know, an avalanche with a new administration in decisions or changes in criteria or programs or whatever that have really occurred at any point that I can really think of. And we've changed in my involvement with the NEA, which goes back 25, 30, some years, I don't know, a lot of years, and a lot of different administrations and parties and whatnot. Things have changed deliberately and slowly. So I would not anticipate great changes regardless of the outcome of the election. That would be my advice to people. That would be my expectation.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I mean, over the years, I've seen very little actual change within agency programs. that are the core, the grants to nonprofit arts organizations throughout the country. Now, of course, some of the newer programs that you've mentioned, Josh, like Poetry Out Loud and The Big Read, I mean, those in particular stemmed from Dana Gioia's term as chair of the NEA. He was a George W. Bush appointee, and he's a poet, and he really wanted to respond to national data that he saw that was challenging and questioning the strength of reading in the American public. So he helped the agency launch those programs, which have stayed on through both the Obama and now the Trump administrations.
So to that point, Dana is now there have been two chairs subsequent to Dana, three chairs, sorry, Rocco Landisman and Jane Chu, and now Marianne Carter. So again, that's a program that was 4 chairs ago. Those initiatives came, and they have still momentum, and they still have value, and the agency is still embracing them many years later and many changes later in leadership. So
yeah, and I was just going to add on to all of that, which is great. Just like any program, I think, and any, let's say, leadership, whoever that may be, whether it's the President of the United States or the leadership of your organization, you might find focus more on one of the initiatives that you have more than the other. And you might put all of your time and effort into that initiative. So I wouldn't say that they're going to change, but maybe there's more focus on something else other than this, like Poetry Out Loud, for example. I'm not saying that it's going away, but there might be more focus on creative forces than there is on Poetry Out Loud. But it doesn't mean that they're going away.
Yeah. But in terms of the major arts discipline areas, those program directors are not political appointees. They are, generally speaking, extremely important leaders in their particular disciplines. Exactly. So and they don't move.
No, they stay there.
Because we've elected a new president.
Yeah, they stay there, and they're great. They're so smart, and they're so smart. They just know everything about their discipline, and they're so creative and very helpful. So we're definitely wanting to help people.
Yeah.
Joshua, when you look at the Arts Endowment kind of sort of over time and different chairmen as we talk about this, and kind of their own passions or vision that they brought to the agency. Again, Sally commented on Dana Gioia now 4 chairs ago, and some of his, and then you look at Rocco Landisman, who basically had a real concept of trying to elevate the agency to make it valuable to communities on a community level, and started the Our Town and other things that were on that level. You saw Jane Chu, who really embraced sort of other sectors, partnering with the arts, military, and other things sort of evolved under Jane. Tell me what you think, where do you think the agency is going under Marianne, or are there focal points or other things that you think are now more important to the agency than maybe in previous administrations, that we should just be kind of aware of direction for the agency, and you think leadership, what's important to them?
I don't have as much experience with the National Endowment for the Arts past that I do right now. I just know that Marianne, Chairman Carter's, like I said at the beginning of my presentation, her focus is giving you access to the agency and giving you access to the arts. And that is her main. I used to have our mission and vision statement on one of my slides, and I would go over that, and I would talk about, this was at the beginning of all of my workshops that I did. And I, as an artist, see how important art is as well. And I would tell a story about how my mom she saw that I was artistic as a child, and she would enroll me in as many art programs as she could do. And I would say how important, like, that's how important the arts is, because it gave me an outlet where I wasn't I didn't have another outlet. So as far as Marianne, I think that she's just trying to strengthen what we have currently and making them as good as they can be right now. Moving forward, I'm not sure. She would only have 2 more years left. I think she's just going to continue strengthening what we have and make it as best as we can. And I don't want to say it too many times, but the access to the arts is one of her main priorities.
So in the very few minutes that we have left, I'd like to move just briefly to the topic of arts advocacy. And Josh, I know you can't advocate on behalf of your agency. And Louis, you can't advocate on behalf of your agency. And by the way, I keep looking at you as though everybody knows that you're on, one of you is on my left and one of you is on, sorry.
I look at myself on the photo and I'm like, where am I looking?
Anywho, but I, as an independent citizen, can advocate all I like, and I can express the need to advocate to my fellow Hoosiers. So I serve as the volunteer state captain for the arts, for Arts Action for Indiana, through Americans for the Arts. And that is a group of statewide arts advocates who meet monthly with lobbyists at Americans for the Arts, and we talk about federal arts policies. And I would like to entreat all of the listeners today to, if you're not already a member, become a member of Americans for the Arts Arts Action Fund. Yesterday during his keynote, Randy Cohen from Americans for the Arts also mentioned this fund. It's free to join, but once you're on it, you will receive Arts Action alerts from Americans for the Arts. So whenever the budget of the NEA, for example, is being discussed in the halls of Congress, we will be able to send you recommendations on how to contact your United States member of Congress and your 2 United States senators from the state of Indiana to let them know that you support public funding for the arts. And as Randy said yesterday, the golden rule is never tell a story without numbers and always use numbers to tell a story. So we will guide you through that process as well. So please sign up for being on the arts advocacy alerts through Americans for the Arts. It's just a really good way to stay in touch with what's happening politically. Years ago, when I lived in upstate New York, I was teaching a class at the Eastman School of Music, which is part of the University of Rochester. And the title of the class was called The Art of Politics and the Politics of Art. And there's something to simply knowing and learning about both the history of cultural support by government in the United States and being able to act on it to help ensure that the citizens of our country and our state and our communities in particular have access to the arts, the kind of access that the NEA and also the Indiana Arts Commission are so terrific at helping to provide through their support.
I'm just going to tag on to that, Sally, and say, when you think about your federal legislators, you know, in the House of Representatives or two U.S. senators here, you know, they spend a lot of time back home. They spend a lot of time not in Washington, D.C. You know, Sally and I have gone most every year to Washington, D.C. as part of Americans for the Arts to talk to them when they're in D.C. But they spend a lot of time here in Indiana, and they're usually much more accessible, a bit more relaxed when they're back home.
Exactly.
In Indiana. And I, you know, and so make a point to call their office and you'll likely get to see them and you can talk to them about, you know, how either the federal funds that come that we have that support our grant programs or the direct federal funds that are given directly in grants from the NEA, you know, have affected, you know, your work and your community and how they can potentially do that as well. And I encourage you to do that. By the way, Josh said, you know, that, you know, 40% of their program dollars go collectively to the states, and so in our Arts Commission's budget, we've got about $1 of federal money for every $4 of state money that we have in our budget. And so, that partnership, not only does the direct grants that come from the NEA affect potentially you, but obviously the money that comes through us as a state Arts Commission is part of the grant pool that we award to people in our state. And so it's a really important piece of our underpinnings, and it's great to just talk to those folks about the work that it's accomplishing in your communities. Let them know about that. They actually want to hear from you. And we were just talking to Senator Braun here from Jasper a couple weeks back, and he invited us down, said, come down, I'll spend the afternoon with you. You don't really get that offer
Right.
when you're in Washington, D.C., but you get that offer when you're in their home territory. So take advantage of it. And, you can be part of a process, and I encourage people to take advantage of that. I think all of them would spend some time with you if you wanted to spend some time with them.
Yeah,
So.
I love that. So number one, know who your elected officials are at all levels, federal, state, and local. Number two, know what they look like, so that number three, when all of us are back walking down the streets, you can say hello to them when you see them at events. And then number four, you'll know you've made it when they say hello to you using your first and last names, right? Then you know you've really got their ear and that you've made an impact. Yeah. So Josh, thank you so much for spending your time with us this afternoon. We're grateful here in Indiana for the many years of support that the Arts Endowment has provided, both through direct grants and through its block grants to the Indiana Arts Commission and to its other innovative programs. We have your very generous offer of contacting you at any time. I may just do that.
Please, I'm here.
Yeah. Because I will say it is a daunting task to apply for a federal grant from any agency, but don't lose heart. It's really worth it. And those are dollars that we want more of here in Indiana.
I mean, it's your taxpayer dollars that are sitting in our funds. So we want your taxpayer dollars to get back out to you. So if you don't apply, then you can't get a grant.
That's right. And I think the only other thing that I haven't said today, which I want to be sure to impart, is that support for the arts at all levels is a bipartisan effort. Now, yesterday, Randy Cohen said it's nonpartisan. Well, it's that too, but it's also bipartisan. Yesterday, we had a session with my co-chair, Terry Whitt-Bailey, with two state senators from here in Indiana. One's a Republican leader in the state Senate, and the other's the Democratic leader in the state Senate. And they always are willing to reach across the aisles, so to speak, to support the arts. And without that bipartisan support, we wouldn't have an NEA today. So, and without the NEA, we might not have an IAC. So bipartisan support, it's important. Get to know your elected official, and please apply for a grant from the NEA.
Yes, yes.
Sally, you might want to tell people again about, you now have a website for advocacy for our state, and we want to direct people to that because that'll have connections into federal advocacy and local advocacy and all sorts of things. So
thank you very much. I mentioned my co-chair, Terry Whitt-Bailey. She and I are co-chairs of this new Indiana Arts Advocacy Organization, and our new website is inartsadvocates.org. Please take a look. And the most important thing there is to click get involved. That just means for now that we would like to get your name and email and mailing address on our mailing list so that we can send you statewide arts advocacy alerts when the Indiana legislature opens up in January. Thank you for that.
Sure. And of course, the IAC, we have an advocacy page and also a Facebook page for that, which you can link into as well. Just wanted to give our encouragement again to all of you in our creative world. I know we're in trying times, but we as a state agency, our federal agency, are there to support the sector during these times and ensure that we can get to the other side of it. You guys do great work with your communities, and we want to encourage you to keep doing that work and to chin up, and we will get through this. And I also want to encourage you to take part in homecoming for the rest of the day. Lots of great sessions. Head back over to your schedule and sign up for something. Hear from your peers and continue your good work. So thanks, Josh, for being with us today. Thank you, Sally, for the great conversation. And we'll see you all later on today as part of Indiana Arts Homecoming 2020. Thanks so much.
Much success. Have a great day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Josh. Bye-bye.